It is now 6 o'clock. I will call this meeting of the Luneburg Town Council to order. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. Before we move on to the approval of the agenda, there is one addition we'd like to make. Councillor Sanford would like to say a few remarks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ernst. I just wanted to let my council colleagues and community know that tonight will be my last council meeting, that effective on Friday, June the 14th, I will be resigning my seat on council. And as some of you may be aware, we've sold our home and it did happen quite quickly. So, and we will be moving to the valley and to one level living. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes tonight before we start the meeting, just as I've been reflecting on this, to thank each and every one of you, because it really has been a pleasure working together. And I really feel we were a team. We worked through some really difficult times, starting with the pandemic and COVID. And, you know, I can remember the wastewater treatment plant was a hot ticket item at the time, and staffing. There were lots of challenges and flooding. And again, the pandemic. So we were able to go through it. We come out the other side. We've had some great discussions. We've disagreed, we've agreed, and we've been able to come together as a group and move forward. So I want to wish each and every one of you all the best as you go forward with the remaining work of council. And again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the community for all of your support during my term. So all the best, and I will visit. Thank you.
And thank you to Susan, and speaking myself, you know, as colleague, council member, cookie fiend, and above all friend. We've sat there for 3.5 years together. I'm going to miss our sidebars and our conversations. And I speak on behalf of all of council that you brought a lot to the table. We always appreciated your input, and we'll certainly miss that. But we wish you the best. We know this move wasn't necessarily, it was a difficult one, I understand, but we wish you the best moving forward. So thank you so much. Okay. Moving on, we will have the approval of the agenda that is before you. I'll look for a mover. Moved by Councillor Mosier, seconded by Councillor Birtles. Are there any errors, or not errors, any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. The minutes of the May 28th, 2024 council meeting. Recommendation that council approve the May 28th, 2024 meeting minutes as presented. By Councillor Halverson, seconded by Councillor Mosier. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. There are no presentations, so moving on to item 6, public input and questions. A reminder that each person is limited to 3 minutes. Each person must state their name. Questions or comments are directed to the chair. And a reminder that comments and questions are limited to items on the agenda before you. So, first of all, we have Tina Risser.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Risser, and I live at 159 Fox Street. I would just like to ask the Deputy Mayor, Council, and staff, if the Blockhouse Hill plebiscite goes ahead, which I have no issue with, what is the town's plan to provide all the information on the issue to the voters so that everyone can make an equally informed decision?
Thank you, Tina, and staff will follow up with that. Thank you. Thanks, Tina. All right, next on is Allison Strong.
So there's nothing on the agenda that I wanted to speak to except for the date. And I think you know probably where I'm going with this because of the last time I spoke before you. And that is to wish a belated happy birthday to Jenny Birtles. And you're looking at Lunenburg's most recent Canadian citizens. I got sworn in this morning, and I'm very happy. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Allison, and congratulations. Next, we have Paula Rennie.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. My name is Paula Rennie and I reside at 211 Cumberland Street. I'd like to speak to item 9.2 on the agenda, Cultural Tourism Working Group Terms of Reference. The aim of the working group is to complete a cultural tourism economic impact study and a sustainable cultural tourism plan as part of the Strategic Tourism Expansion Program. Under the section in the agenda, meetings, bullet 3, the terms of reference stipulate that meetings shall be held in person. Under meeting administration, the terms of reference stipulate that meetings shall be open to the public and advertised on the town's website, but will not be live streamed or recorded. I think it is important that the meetings be open to the public, which you say they will be, so that generally we can hear about the tourism offerings being assessed and their impacts and benefits, and specifically how our World Heritage Site, the cultural tourism it produces, and the economic benefits to the town are being assessed also. However, public attendance is problematic given that under the terms of reference, as I mentioned just above, the meetings will not be live streamed or video recorded. Furthermore, according to the section meetings, second paragraph, bullets 1 through 3, the chair can cancel a meeting if all issues on the agenda can be addressed by phone or email. The meeting is purely for information sharing with no consensus building or decision-making necessary, and the same result can be achieved by sending emails to everyone. And many people, especially key decision makers, are unavailable for the meeting. I do not see these terms as conducive to public meetings and information sharing. I ask that Council direct staff to change the terms of reference to reflect my concerns and ensure that all meetings are open to the public, advertised widely and live streamed or recorded and offered the next day. All members, key decision makers in particular, should ensure that they are available for meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Next up, we have Robert Young.
Is it on? Yep. Okay, Robert Young, 225 Dufferin Street. I didn't realize it had to be on the agenda, but I'll sneak these in really fast since our mayor is not here tonight. I guess I won't mention the dismal failure of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'll wait for another meeting. Number 2, my annual big thank you to all the outside workers working for the town. They fixed up my lawn really well. You know, they dumped the snow up in the lawn during the winter and saves them a lot of time and trouble. And then they fix up my lawn the following spring. And they did a fantastic job. It looks better than when my father planted it back in the 1940s. And number 3, this has to do with politics. There could be a change in the federal government in the next federal election. And under Trudeau, he brought in the best infrastructure program in the history of the nation, as far as I'm concerned. And if Pierre Poilievre discontinues that policy, we're going to take a beating when it comes to property taxes. It would be kind of neat to find out if you want to use this year or last year or whatever for an example, how much money, how much the increase in property taxes would be in order to perform the duties that they do, you know, all the infrastructure program. Because right now we're paying about 25 cents on the dollar for a lot of our infrastructure. And if that gets dismissed, You know, it'd be nice to see how much that would hit all the homeowners in the country even. So I'll put that on your agenda, you know, in the back of your mind, and dig out the information, and don't expect you to do it overnight. And that's pretty well all I have to say for you now.
Thank you, Robert. I'll be in Ottawa next week. I'll see what I can do. And just for future reference, Robert, we are sticking 2 items on the agenda for, thank you. And finally, last one, we have Tom Barkley. Okay, thank you. Then moving on. Item 7, correspondence. We have no correspondence at this time, so on to no public hearings, presentations, or appeals. So business arising and unfinished business. First, we have 9.1 Planning Advisory Committee Terms of Reference and Public Participation Policy, Notice of Policy. And there are 2 recommendations, which I'll read now and then hand it over to our interim CAO for a report. Recommendation 1, the council approve the Planning Advisory Committee Terms of Reference as presented. And recommendation 2, that council give notice to approve the new Public Planning Participation Program policy, which would repeal and replace policy number 65, the Planning Public Participation Program policy. A lot of P's there. I'll hand it over to the interim CAO to give us a report.
Good evening, everyone. Again, for the record, I'm Hillary Grant, interim CAO. Staff have brought back for council's consideration Planning Advisory Committee Terms of Reference and a Public Participation Program policy. On May 28th, council discussed revisions aimed at enhancing clarity, governance, and community engagement in the town's planning process. The proposed changes include the ability to appoint Planning Advisory Committee members for 2 or 3 years towards staggering appointments, clarification on withholding public submissions, and providing accommodations. While the memo says differently, and I apologize for that, the updates do see meetings live streamed and public participation meetings recorded. The proposed public participation program policy has reintroduced newspaper notices for public participation meetings before the Planning Advisory Committee. If approved, planning issues will only be advertised once in a newspaper, unlike twice, which is what we do now. And the newspaper advertisement will appear at the earliest opportunity for public feedback, i.e. at the Planning Advisory Committee stage. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, Councillor Sanford.
I just have a comment. First of all, thank you so much through the chair to the interim CAO. Great job, Hillary, for making the changes with that. And I think as we go forward, thinking back on the last meeting that we had and to the point that Councillor Mosier made, it would be nice to flag this, I think, for the incoming council in the fall to determine, is there really a need for a planning advisory committee at this point? It seems, you know, when you think about it, it seems to be very redundant because all of the steps that are put in place are actually held with council, and that's the public engagement is held with council. So I don't know what the process would be, but I would just be interested in seeing that maybe flagged for the incoming council in the fall to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there are 2 recommendations ahead of us. I'll start with the first one, that council approve the Planning Advisory Committee Terms of Reference as presented. Do we, okay, Councillor Sanford is moving that. Councillor Mosier seconding. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. The second motion or recommendation is that council give notice to approve the new Public Planning Participation Program policy, which would repeal and replace policy 65, the Planning Public Participation Program policy. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Sanford. Councillor Bertels, sorry. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Moving on to item 9.2, Cultural Tourism Working Group Terms of Reference. Recommendation that council approve the Cultural Tourism Working Group Terms of Reference as presented, and I will turn it over to the interim CAO to give us a report.
Thank you again. For the record, I'm Hilary Grant, interim CAO. So following council's direction on May 28th, staff have updated the Cultural Tourism Working Group Terms of Reference to reflect community goals. This working group will play a pivotal role in developing a sustainable cultural tourism plan, emphasizing economic growth, heritage preservation, and community engagement. Cultural tourism is a vital aspect of Lunenburg's economy, attracting visitors from around the world to experience the town's rich history and vibrant culture. The working group's composition includes, at minimum, 2 Lunenburg residents. Other representatives may or may not be Lunenburg residents. For example, a representative of Lunenburg's waterfront industries may work or own a business on Lunenburg's waterfront, but may not be a resident. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, Councillor Bertels.
Thank you. I also have to agree with Paula in regards to underneath the meetings for this, where it says a meeting can be canceled by a chair if all issues on the agenda can be addressed by phone or email consultations. I really think that needs to be removed. I know I'm personally on a committee that if they want to vote, we're sending emails back and forth, and it's not respectful. And the meeting is purely for information sharing with no conscience. I still think that needs to be stricken from it as well. Information possible needs to be given to the public. So I think the only one that should say is, well, number 3, many people that can't attend or key decision makers should be the reasons for meeting being canceled, or weather, of course.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? I guess Councillor Halverson.
Well, people steal my thunder. It's good. No, I have the same concerns, and I would like to see it. Mike, I will ask a question first. Do we feel that the information that's going to be coming forward to this committee, would any of it be considered sensitive or confidential business information that perhaps business owners wouldn't want released broadly? I'm trying to capture why we would need to have a meeting that wouldn't be open to the public.
Through the chair. So a working group is normally slightly different from other council committees in the fact that they're largely being put in charge to do something that staff would normally handle, which is administer a project. So it's a way to set up a project admin structure that automatically has more public engagement and involvement than if there was no working group dedicated to it. The timelines, for example, in which a working group normally works is much tighter. And again, no decisions that a working group would make would be binding. Any sort of decision would still have to come forward for council consideration. So really, they're supposed to steer the project. Hence, information reports would normally be shared amongst members, and then they would meet to, for example, make a decision on project scope, project direction, et cetera. And all of those information reports would then come forward at that public meeting when a decision is being made versus, for example, a working group meeting potentially multiple times a week over the course of a project to receive information reports over and over. It's not unusual for working groups in other municipalities to function this way. But of course, if we do want to take this working group and move it towards more of a committee structure, that's certainly a possibility.
Again, my concern really is just about transparency and making sure that everyone's informed all the way along about this process. So is there an objection to what, or is there a reason why we shouldn't broadcast these meetings and have them Zoom broadcast as we do these council meetings we're in right now?
Through the chair, again, largely it's just an administrative issue. So each time, of course, we create a working group, we create a committee. To hold a formal committee such as this one, you normally have at minimum 4 staff. Working groups, again, are normally a little less administratively burdensome and a little more nimble. Of course, this project does have a series of public consultation also built into it above and beyond what the working group may be doing. But again, it's more about strategic planning without moving any council business forward. But certainly, again, if staff resources, if council would like to see additional staff resources dedicated to the working group and a potentially slower delivery on this project in order to have more public meetings, more publicly broadcast meetings at a higher rate, certainly that is an option.
Again, I'm sensitive to the to your concerns about timelines. Before I get into this, perhaps I should ask, what is the anticipated timeline you see this working group functioning before? Do you anticipate them working just to develop the terms of reference and to set up the project, or do you anticipate that they will meet regularly over the course of the study?
Through the chair, they will be meeting regularly over the course of the study. Our funding agreement does have a pretty strict timeline. So this project must be completed within 1.5 years. That includes all the public consultation and the early deliverables.
Okay, so that is, I mean, that's a long time. This isn't the short steering committee that we normally would talk about. This is a longer. This is almost a committee, I should say. It's not a normal working group like you talked about. It's more of almost a committee. I guess with that in mind, we don't know, but obviously the terms of reference haven't been set for this working group yet. I think maybe this might be a situation where I think maybe what we could do is wait until the terms of reference are set and determine then what will be put forward at these meetings to determine if they need to be broadcast. Again, I'm sensitive to the needs of, 4 staff members is a burden on top of every other meeting and committee that those staff have to participate in. But could we also share that information? Perhaps, if there's the meeting minutes, we could post those following the meeting up online in a reasonable time. I guess look to the clerk of the CEO to interim CEO to something like that.
Through the chair, all meeting minutes would be posted. That is included in the terms of reference.
Okay. So there is public awareness then of what's happening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, there were definitely some very good points brought up. So again, we have a recommendation the council approve the cultural tourism working group terms of reference as presented. We may, of course, as a reminder, we can move that as it is. We can amend it, or we can motion to return this to staff with some of the things. So does anybody wish to?
I would like to amend the motion. And somebody can help me with it, but I would like to amend that underneath meetings where it says a meeting can be canceled by the chair if those first 2 bullets have been removed.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the cultural tourism working group terms of reference as presented with the omission of the first 2 bullet points. Please, yes.
So that the terms of reference would be presented with the following amendments: that under the meeting section, the removal of all issues on the agenda can be addressed by phone or email consultations, and the additional bullet of the meeting is purely for information sharing with no consensus building or decision making necessary, and the same result can be achieved by sending emails to everyone.
Okay, is that agreeable to you?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. May we have a seconder to this motion? Councillor Halverson. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Moving on to item 10, new business. Our first item is item 10.1, non-compliant shed settlement agreement. The recommendation is that council direct staff to execute a settlement agreement with the owners of 72 Tannery Road to resolve the issues related to the non-compliant shed on their property. And I will again turn to the interim CAO for this.
With apologies for the repetition. For the record, I'm Hillary Grant, interim CAO. Before council is a draft settlement agreement concerning a non-compliant shed on Tannery Road. The town received a complaint around whether the shed was permitted and concerned by the shed's location. After thorough investigation and discussions with the complainants and property owners, staff propose a settlement that balances compliance with practicality. The shed's current location and design do not align with our land use bylaw. However, the property owners have cooperated in good faith and the proposed agreement allows the shed to remain with specific conditions, including its relocation to a compliant position on the property lot. This approach addresses the concerns raised by the complainants while avoiding unnecessary legal actions or costs. The settlement terms are clear. The shed minus its porch must be relocated within 30 days, and no further modifications can be made without town approval. This resolution ensures that the town's regulations are upheld without imposing undue hardship on the property owners. The settlement reflects a commitment to fair and reasonable enforcement of town bylaws, fostering community harmony. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'll actually get a little break. We don't have some reports. So again, are there any questions regarding this? Okay, so I'll reread the recommendation. The council directs staff to execute a settlement agreement with the owners of 72 Tannery Road to resolve the issues related to the non-compliant shed on their property. Moved by Councillor Mosier, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. 10.2 is a noise bylaw exemption request. There is no report for this, but the recommendation covers it all. So I'll just read it out as it stands. That council approve a noise bylaw exemption for June 19th, 2024, starting at 11 p.m. until 2 a.m. on June 20th, 2024, and June 20th, 2024, starting at 11 p.m. until 2 a.m. on June 21st, 2024, to accommodate filming activities in an area bounded by Montague Street and Blue Nose Drive between Duke Street and Rum Row per GEP Liars Inc. approved 2024 film permit. May I have a motion to that effect?
Can I just make a comment first?
Of course, yes.
We just should really let them know that that night is the prom in Lunenburg. So Montague Street will be hopping and we need to let our children have pictures on the waterfront.
That is a very good point that I would have overlooked. So thank you very much. Is it possible to contact, I'll look to either of you. Is it possible to notify them of that? Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions to the motion before we call for the? Okay, then do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Mosier, seconded by Councillor Halverson. Discussion or debate? All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion's carried. Next 10.3, considering a plebiscite for Blockhouse Hill Development Information Report. And I will turn this over to our municipal clerk.
Thank you. As noted, this report is here for information purposes only. At its last meeting, council directed staff to prepare a report on how a plebiscite could be conducted regarding the divesting and development of Blockhouse Hill according to design option 2 out of sight. Per the Municipal Government Act, in order to conduct a plebiscite, there are a few steps that must be followed, such as council must pass a motion to conduct the plebiscite, and there has to be at least 10 weeks in between when the time the motion was passed and when the plebiscite is conducted. If council decides to proceed with the plebiscite, it is recommended that it be conducted at the same time as the 2024 municipal election, allowing residents to cast their vote for council and the plebiscite all in the same process. To adhere to the minimum 10-week timeline, should council wish to consider a plebiscite, a motion would be needed by August 10th. As council is scheduled to meet only once in July and August, this resolution would need to be made at the July 9th meeting at the latest. It should be noted, while there are no specific parameters for what questions can be called in a plebiscite, plebiscites typically gauge public opinion on issues that may lead to significant changes in a community, often involving topics that fall outside of existing municipal rules and regulations. Design option 2 out of sight for the proposed development of Blockhouse Hill is aligned with the town's land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy. Considering a plebiscite development that is already aligned with the land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy is uncommon. Holding a plebiscite on this issue could create an expectation for public votes on other compliant developments and council's decision on managing its land holdings. And with that, that's my report. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kayla. Are there any questions at this time? Okay. Hearing none, thank you again. We'll move on. Notice of motion. Yeah, moving on to the notice of motion, information requests, and councillor reports. Are there any councillors who wish to make a notice of motion at this time? Nope, then moving on, nothing under item 12. So then item 13 in camera, we have two items, a personnel matter and the acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property. We have a recommendation that council move in camera to discuss agenda items, personnel 13.1 personnel matter and 13.2 acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property per the Municipal Government Act. Do I have a motion to, okay, moved by Councillor Bertle, second by Councillor Sanford. All those in favor? Motion carried. I thank everyone for coming out tonight and enjoy the sunny evening.